Welcome to the Sensible Center podcast, where two middle-aged guys drunkenly talk politics and political reform. Grab an adult beverage and enjoy the show. Further information can be found at sensiblecenterpack.com. You can reach us at sensiblecenterpack@gmail.com or follow us on X at USASCPack. Bob, you there?
Kevin,
Oh,
evening.
how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
All right. Listeners, Bob and I actually saw each other since the last episode. Wasn't that a fun occasion, Bob?
That was a good time.
Yeah,
And
we drink a lot of wine.
and a little bit of whiskey, and the
That's right, we
conversation
did
went
drink.
towards politics.
Yeah, as it always does.
I think one time we need to get that whole crew together and just record it and talk politics and see where it goes.
There you
The
go. A
last hour of the
6-hour
night,
podcast.
the last hour of the night or something. That's when it's most fun anyway.
All right, we'll put that on our agenda. Look for that in upcoming episodes. An end of the evening drunken political discussion. Could be good,
Get some
So what do
randoms wanting to join us sometime.
right? So what have you been up to? You had a company outing last night, huh?
Yeah, company outing last night. Other than that, work's kind of busy. You're in that time of the year right now where people are trying to get their projects done just before the holidays kind of hit because everybody starts disappearing on vacation and everything, getting rid of their vacation time. So it's been busy, which is a
Yeah,
good thing.
I miss those outing dinners and outings. Could always get a good meal, some good drink in you.
Yes, sir.
Hopefully not embarrass yourself in front of the higher ups or anything.
No, that's part of the deal when you invite me to your party.
Did you keep your clothes on for the most part?
Yeah, yeah, that I did.
All right.
That I did, but only because it was cool last night in Nashville. So yeah,
20, 30 years ago when I was, early in my career, you could get away with that kind of stuff. But nowadays people are more sensitive.
it's
You can't
yeah, the millennials and the what gen are we on now after the millennials?
Gen Z,
Z,
are we in
Gen
Z?
Z.
I
Yeah,
don't
it could
know if
be.
we go back. Where do we go from there after we go to Z? But
I don't know. Jay Z.
yeah, you get a good steak dinner and some wine, hopefully, and some drinks in you. And
Yeah, it's fun. It's just good to see people that you don't see very often, especially with the new world environment with COVID
right.
or post-COVID.
So speaking of which, are you drinking anything tonight, or
I
was last night?
am.
All
I
right.
I couldn't go dry tonight. I went dry all day. Usually I do a little preparing for these things. Tonight I decided to wait up until the moment of just to give myself a little bit of a break. And I am drinking a short barrel. That's the name of the brand of whiskey. It's Kentucky Straight Bourbon. Short Barrel's actually out of Georgia. They're building a brand there. They're buying other distilleries. This barrel in particular actually came from Jim Beam. It's a Booker's bottle. It's got a little funk to it. It was a barrel pick done through a club down here. It's at 116.1 proof, uh, and it was aged, I believe, 6 years. Doesn't have an age on there. So however long they typically age a Booker's, that's about where it is. How about you?
Bob, I've got tonight from your home state. Now your new home state from Tennessee. The Old Smoky Tennessee Moonshine. I'm sure you're familiar with this company.
I
Are
am.
you?
Yes, sir.
From right in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. I remember we actually bought it at the distillery on a trip to Gatlinburg. This is fine stuff. It's Tennessee Sing, which is whiskey made with ginger and ginseng flavors. And of course,
Probably.
I'm drinking it on the rocks.
It's got to give you a pick me up too as you go, right?
Yeah, it's
With the
seven.
ginger and the ginseng, I would think make you sweat a little.
Is that why I'm sweating?
That's got to be it.
It's 70 proof. I think Deb was making mules with this, which is probably a good idea, right? Kind of has the Moscow mule type of flavor to it,
Yeah,
which
I
is
think
kind of the
those
ginger,
generally have
right?
ginger. Yeah, yeah.
It's quite tasty. So I'm just pouring it out. These come in like glass jars or something, right? Uh,
I've
I s
not actually had any of their stuff.
no, this is the first time I've had it either. The seal was broken though, so maybe I'll finish it tonight. That's the nice cover. So, needless to say, again, you're drinking something better than I am.
That'll make for an interesting podcast if you finish a whole jar of moonshine.
I'm pretty deep into it already.
Yeah,
I was planning to take a nap during Biden's address tonight. I don't know if you saw that or not.
I did not.
He addressed the nation about, strangely, mostly Ukraine and a little bit Israel. But we could get into that. But of course, the number's 100 billion.
I
That's
did see that.
we could. Well,
60
we're
for
gonna
Ukraine and 40 for
yeah
Israel.
yeah we'll talk about we're gonna talk about Israel a little later because nothing better to talk about than Israel after a couple of drinks. So that'll be interesting. We apologize for whatever we say, but hopefully we'll have an interesting discussion about that. But
I'm
Bob,
changing my
before we
name to Ukraine Israel, and I'm going to be really rich soon.
there you go. Before we get to that, I just want to let you know we got a couple listener emails in since the last podcast. So I thought I'd pull some of the better ones and read them, and maybe we could respond to them. Does that make sense to you?
Should we react to them or just let the listeners' statements stand for themselves?
Well, I'll let you decide. So the first one comes from Dan, Big Dan 69 and MSN.com. MSN. Is there still an MSN out there? I think that was my first email address was MSN. What was
It's
yours?
my first email address I still have actually. It's a Hotmail email address.
Oh wow. So
Yeah.
you're OG email.
Yes, sir.
Wow. Nobody's
Which, as
hacked
a
it
matter
yet?
of fact, I was reading somewhere that car insurance companies will actually make your rate higher if you give them a Hotmail email address.
Really? What's wrong with
There's
Hotmail?
some algorithm that determines people who still use that drive terribly. And,
Wow.
judging from experience, they are accurate.
There you go. You've kept at it, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, you know what you are, so you don't want to hide it. So Dan
All right,
writes,
what's Big Dan got for us?
Dan writes, Kevin. This one's directed towards me. Oh no, I should have read these before I picked them out. Could you possibly speak quicker and more intelligibly? God, Dan, that's not very nice. Uh,
I think Dan's
I
got a
don't.
point.
I don't think I can. Definitely not tonight after the moonshine. Here's what we're gonna do, Dan. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna actually do an experiment with this podcast, and we want listener feedback. We're actually gonna because some other listeners have told us they actually listen to the podcast on 1.25 times because evidently I unlike other people, it takes me a little while to think before I speak, and I think people generally avoid thinking before they speak. So we're going to speed it up. So give us feedback whether you like the quicker podcast. But as far as speaking more intelligibly, there's no. I'm 56 years old. I don't think there's going to be anything that I could do about that. So sorry to disappoint you, Dan. Maybe another podcast is better for you, but we'll try to at least make it less painful by speaking quicker. Um,
Thanks, Dan.
yeah. Wait, I think the next one's for you, Bob. So this
Oh, come
is
on now.
from Aaron at Aaron Gobra 420 at AOL.com. Where are we getting these listeners?
AOL.com.
Yeah, where are we getting these listeners? 420 too. That's suspicious, Bob.
That is suspicious.
No wonder it's for you,
Are
Bob.
these plants? Are these
No,
plants?
no, I swear they're coming directly. Bob. It's directed towards you, Bob. What percentage of the crap that comes out of your mouth do you actually believe?
Now I
Jeez, Aaron.
understand the 420.
That's not very nice, Aaron.
That is not very nice.
And these were the better. These were the better ones that I picked.
Better out than in. That's all I have to say.
So, do you have a percentage, or does one have to judge for themselves?
Yep. Aaron's probably smarter than me, so I trust our listeners' judgment.
You trust your listeners?
I trust the listeners' judgment. I have. We'll go with zero.
Go with zero.
We'll go with zero.
No, I'd say it's higher than that.
No,
It's at least 25%.
no.
Don't cut yourself short.
I do try to be sincere. Actually, I believe most of what comes out of my mouth. Sometimes I'll
Yes.
say something and I'll realize I'm wrong later, but at the time I completely believe it.
Yeah, you're very sincere.
Yeah,
I,
I'm
I
sincere.
believe that.
Anyway, anyway,
I think we should move on.
anyway,
All right, Joe.
As Joe's telling us,
anyway,
He's ushering us on.
anyway.
is Joe there? So before we get into deeper discussions, let's just touch base since we had a little bit discussion on the last podcast about this House Speaker fiasco that we're coming up with. So last time we spoke, the Dems voted with about 8 Republicans to vacate the House Speaker, and here we are 2 weeks later, and they still don't have anyone to fill the Speaker role. And I guess Steve Scalise has dropped. Jordan's not giving up the fight yet. The latest, I don't know if you read, Bob, this afternoon. The latest, they might be having a vote tonight. In fact, the latest was they were going to try to. Jordan was pushing to like give what's the guy's name? McHenry, is it? The Speaker pro temp
Yes.
power
Yeah, I
powers for
forget his name.
60 days, I guess, basically to get through the end of the year, and he would kind of continue to try to negotiate and consolidate it against around a vote, and he couldn't even get that done.
No.
Everyone's like, that's not going to happen. We're gonna stay here until we figure it out. So I don't even think they could get a pizza order straight now if the Republicans tried to get a pizza order straight. So I don't. I mean, any
I've
predictions on what's going to happen?
I've seen this coming for years, Kevin. I knew this back when Eric Cantor was voted out of office. You're going to have a larger portion of Congress become more and more conservative on the edge in the style of a Jim Jordan, right, or a Matt Getz. There's going to be more in the future, not less. And I predict the same for the other side. When the Dems get back Congress, I doubt they put Pelosi back in there. I think at least if there's an election between there, which there most likely will be,
Now
barring
you,
major disaster.
now you got to
I
at least give it to her. I saw her on, I don't know, I guess it was on MSNBC right after the Jordan votes, and she pointed out she had a majority of only like even less. I think the lowest she had was a majority of two. And whether you like Nancy Pelosi or not, she kept her caucus in line, right?
Yeah,
Even the
she's good with
squad
the
was.
whip.
I mean, the squad was in there, and she went to their offices and whatever. Um, she got it in line. So uh,
Here's the thing:
that
is I think they're going to get it done. I don't know if it's going to be Jim Jordan because it's going to be very difficult for Jim Jordan to take that position and then get through a budget. And that's what maybe 30 days out now, where they've got to get some spending passed.
yeah, I mean
Because of everything he's campaigned against and the situation with the last speaker, it's going to be very interesting. And that's why I don't know what they're going to do because I think the majority of the Republicans know that he's not going to be able to, he's going to go in there. He may try to cut funding for Ukraine altogether. He may, get a wall through there. Um, there's going to be a lot of things that he wants to do, and if he can't get it done, he won't bring the bill, and it's going to create problems. So he's cornering himself too. It's really fascinating.
yeah, I mean it's a really interesting dynamic. And as we said before, we thought that coalescing with the Democrats, trying to work with McCarthy or at least some other non-Freedom Caucus leader. I mean, I think that's the only path that they're going to need Democratic votes, but maybe not. Maybe somehow he'll push it across. But again, how long is that going to hold, right?
Right.
Even if he does it, if you can't, if you have to, just like McCarthy, if you have to make promises that you're not going to be able to keep, and if this one person can kind of throw the thing off, then what are we actually accomplishing? Interesting. Scalise didn't decide to do the public vote, but uh, I guess Jim Jordan said, "Hold my beer and and watch me embarrass myself on a couple of
Yeah.
rounds." Like, sure, I'll go do it. And also interesting, the vast majority of the Republicans who voted against the Freedom Caucus by voting to keep McCarthy, right? Then actually, all except 20 of them ended up voting for Jordan, who's the leader of the co-founder of the Freedom Caucus, which is which makes no sense at all. How did he even get that many votes when clearly they wanted to keep McCarthy? I mean, none of
There's
it.
politics at play, and I
Man,
guarantee you there's so many backroom deals going on. You've probably got the White House involved at this point, and they're probably trying to cut some deals with some of the people you don't hear in the news. And sooner or later, something will break. I think that's what's really going on. That's how Washington operates.
yeah. I mean, it's clearly indicative of a very kind of broken dynamic. Whatever's happening in the background is clearly not working here. I mean, you could argue that by not working, it's working, right? We're not
Yeah, absolutely.
we're not pouring $100 million out at this point, right? Uh, some people like the I mean, the uncertainty is not good, but there's an argument
Well,
that inactivity by Congress sometimes isn't a bad thing.
that really this whole speaker battle ties in well with everything we want to talk about tonight because it's having an effect on bonds as well, right? I
Yeah, we
guarantee
might
you
as
some of
well.
this bond stuff is here. And then yes, the 100 billion to fund foreign wars, that is absolutely another situation that is going to be dependent on how this battle goes.
So you mentioned bonds, and we talked about this before, and they keep on creeping up since we last talked, right? Some people say they're spiking, but I mean, it's a little bit flattening of the yield curve. The long terms are going up, but mortgage, I think it's at 8% now, 30-year, and
Yeah.
probably
So I
more than
checked
that for a jumbo.
right before
So,
we joined, and the 10-year Treasury is at 4.969.
woo, that's close to five.
Yeah, and that's actually down a little bit from close today. So
The interesting thing I heard also that I was watching, might have been CNBC, they were comparing to foreign bond yields. So like the German 10 year is at 3.2. That's a pretty big. That's becoming a hefty spread, right?
it is.
Which is
And
not great.
I think it's a sign of a bunch of things. There's not a lot of confidence in the House to be able to get anything done as far as spending goes. I think it's a sign that bond investors have lost confidence in the Fed's ability to bring inflation back. Powell himself admitted that increasing deficits could be a continued factor in the inflation fight. And I think that was today he said it. Um, Larger deficits are going to lead to higher inflation. Simple as that. And you can't get spending under control. The only way you're going to get spending under control is if Congress completely fails. And we know that the powers that be are not going to let that continue to happen. I don't think anybody wants to see failure in Congress. I think a lot of people would just like to see spending cut. And the Fed is softening its tone. They're not really talking about raising rates again now. They're starting to say we're going to have an extended pause.
Well,
So
the
I think
the bond market's kind of doing the work for them.
it is.
So a lot of things are tied to 10 year treasuries, and as that continues to kind of move up, I think the bond market just doesn't believe 2% is achievable in a reasonable period of time, and that sort of target by the Fed is, despite what they're saying, I read something that they expect it to be in the high twos inflation by the end of next year. I just don't. Housing housing hasn't really broken. Um, Energy prices, especially with the Middle East now, probably aren't going to recede that much.
You know,
So
the bottom's higher.
it's like what's going to give outside of a deeper recession, which I mean, all the
Well,
economic news, the September jobs report was up, retail sales were better. The
our dependence
economy's
on China, it's a role there too, because China's suddenly dumping large amounts of our stocks and bonds, or U.S. stocks and bonds. So if they continue to dump bonds at an elevated rate, you're going to continue to see the yields rise.
that's how it works.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to buy them. But you think they would be attractive yields when you're, like I said, if you're looking at other sovereign debt. Um, if you're looking for yield, come to the United States. We've got it.
Yeah.
We
Now,
finally
there's
got
some point
yield
where it
after all these
breaks.
years.
There's some point where it breaks. I just don't know where that is.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, all the economic news earnings are coming in pretty strong. Third quarter earnings, generally, I think J.P. Morgan did well. Netflix came in above on their subscriber numbers. A lot of the
Jobs are
big ones,
holding.
jobs are holding. You're in that catch 22, right? It's good news, but then is it good news? Which
Some
is kind of a
interesting
strange place to be.
things about this bond sell-off. It's actually on par with the largest ever bond sell-off in history. And It's in in line with the largest sell-offs for any major country that hasn't lost a world war or had hyperinflation. When you think about that, that's just amazing to me. And I'm not quite sure where it's going to go. There's a lot of unusual things about this, from the COVID aspect that did some of this and how low
Yep.
rates were and all the money that was pumped into the system.
Yep.
And there's so many differences with today compared to previous recessions and previous yield increases and things like that. That'd be interesting to see what happens here.
But the good news is very few people in Congress are talking about it. They
That's
just
right.
want to. They just want to spend more money and send more money out.
That's right.
It's bizarre. It's like, don't you see what's going on here? Shouldn't we be at least trying to turn the boat so we can have some credibility in the
The higher
marketplace for
that
people?
interest rate goes, the harder it's going to be for us to pay down any debt at all. All
Well,
this
there's
debt
a
we're building.
there's a little bit difference. Yes, we are issuing new debt. Clearly, there's a lot of old debt. The problem is then when we start having to roll some of the stuff, right?
Right.
I haven't looked at the maturities of what's actually in the book now, but yeah, if it continues and you have to keep on reissuing more debt, you're at a higher rate, then you're really kind of in the downward spiral.
I think the short-term yields are pretty high too, though. That's the point. That's the thing.
Yeah, you're right about that. I mean, the curve is still inverted, but it's getting closer to flattening. Um, well, anyway, the other piece of news today was Sidney Powell, Trump's attorney at one point, I think. She was buddy with Rudy for a while. She pled guilty, I guess, the 6 misdemeanor counts of, let me see, I think I had it written down here. She admitted to taking action for the purpose of willfully tampering with election ballot markers and tabulating machines with the intent of taking and appropriating information, data, and software, the property of Dominion voting systems. So she was 6 felonies, as you pointed out, down to 6 misdemeanors. Doesn't look like she's going to get any jail time, minor fine, and I think she's got a
I
rate.
actually thought it was down to one misdemeanor from six
Uh,
felonies.
I read 6 misdemeanor counts, so I don't know if they just lowered the 6 felonies down to misdemeanor. I'm guessing it's 6 years of probation, so maybe it's 1 year for every misdemeanor count. I don't know. And then a minor fine. Interestingly enough, she's got to write an apology letter to the people of Georgia, so that'll be funny. Maybe she could ask Trump. But I guess her trial was going to start tomorrow, and the other attorney, Chesborough, who more had to do with the kind of the fake elector slates that they tried to get through. I think his is actually starting tomorrow. I don't know if they're going to do jury selection, but time will tell. I don't know what this means for Donald. I think she's agreed to testify for racketeering, which I think is kind of what the AG is bringing here. Um, it's not untypical. Usually, those are sort of in, or historically have been in mob cases, and they sort
Yeah.
of roll people up to testify and kind of go up the chain of command to try to get the higher ups, which may be her strategy for indicting 19 people to kind of not actually do 19 trials, but to get a good majority of them
I
to
was reading though that
plea.
the racketeering charges are usually easier to get in the first court, but they're more likely to fail on appeal, which I find interesting for the political angle there. But also, yeah, as far as her and pleading down, I don't know. I One side of me thinks they knew they didn't have a case and they're creating a scene and it's all political. And they pled it down to get over with, or they pled it down to what really they could get her on anyway. That's how I look at it. But we'll see what her testimony's like.
Yep, time will tell. Time will tell. Um, I think that Donald's been in court for his fraud case. I think he was in court yesterday. But
New York.
yeah, lots going on. Interesting times. We'll stay away from any election talk since we did that last time. So, in the interest of moving on and for comedic purposes, And due to popular acclaim, the critics are raving about Biden family ties. By the way, Bob, I don't know if you've seen it, but we've gotten several good reviews of uh, Biden family ties. So we're going to present episode 3 of Biden family ties.
So I'm Joe today, right?
You're Joe.
Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Wake
Hello,
up. Wake up.
Mom.
Hey, President Dude.
Hey, what? You aren't Mom.
No, Sleepy Joe. It's the governor of California.
Oh, the Terminator. You came back, Jack.
Oh, no. It's not Arnold. I'm the current governor.
I thought Diane Feinstein died, and frankly, you don't sound like her anyway.
No, no, old man. It's Governor Gavin Newsom.
If you say so. But I'd rather talk to the Terminator.
Yeah, another guy who doesn't know when to retire.
What?
Loser say what?
What?
Anyhow,
Anyhow,
Joe, I just called to see how you're feeling. Feeling good, Joe? Getting your rest?
oh yeah, sure. 8 hours every night. And unlimited naps. Madam Usel's keeping me regular. All systems go, man.
Oh, yeah, great to hear, dude. You ever get tired, Mr. President? You know, I just got back from a long vacation to Europe and the Middle East. Best thing for me. Feel like a new man. You ever feel like you need a long, long vacation?
I'm not on vacation now. I've been living in this big hotel for like 3 years now. When do I get to go home?
You could go home anytime, Joe, just like Dorothy. Just click your heels.
I tried that. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice.
Oh boy, it's worse than I thought.
So how was your vacation, Terminator? I love mine.
I'm not the Terminator, Joe. I'm Gavin Newsom. Your worst nightmare. I mean, Gavin Newsom. You know what, Joe? It was terrific. So many beautiful cathedrals, amazing ancient rooms, warm people, and delicious ice cream.
Wait, did you say ice cream, man?
Why, yes, I did.
I thought ice cream was only in America.
Oh, Mr. President, they have ice cream all over the world.
Get the heck out, you lying dog-faced pony soldier.
No, seriously, dude, the best ice cream in the world. Swear, dude. Ari's Ice Cream Shack in Tel Aviv.
Where's that at?
Israel, Joe.
Oh, they're having some problems over there now, I hear.
Oh, Joe, that's just fake Fox News.
They have sprinkles?
What?
They have sprinkles, for the ice cream.
Oh, lots of sprinkles, the best, and all the colors.
Maybe I should go and check on what's happening over there. Maybe I'll get some ice cream on the way to the airport. Ice cream.
Great idea, Mr. President. Tell Ari and Bibi I said hi, and remember to be safe. We wouldn't want anything to happen to you. And
So,
there's another episode of Biden Family Ties.
so
Now that the
that's how
writer's
they got
strike
him
was
to go
over.
to Israel.
That's how they got him. It was Gavin. Gavin all along. Just in case, this is a hypothetical scenario written by our crack team of writers, which is are back from strike. That's why we're able to provide you this. We respect the unions. Hope you enjoyed that episode of Biden Family Values. Very good job doing Biden, Joe. Neither of us could do a Biden impression, but you did it the best. You played it well. I think you have a career ahead of you.
Some would say Joe's more eloquent than I am.
Anyway, all right.
Anyhow,
So
man.
that leads us into our discussion of Israel. So just at the top, I want to put a little disclaimer. Clearly, this is a. I was thinking we might cover Israel and abortion in the same podcast, but I didn't want to lose all our listeners in one podcast. I
I
thought
think
I'd
we're already
split.
past that
I,
anyway.
I thought it's. You might be right. Might as well go for broke, right?
You have to have listeners in order to lose them.
We got Dan and Aaron. We know they're out there.
No, that's true.
Um, so, but I think we'll just stick with Israel. So, my disclaimer is, I might say unintelligent or stupid things. Obviously, many people have strong opinions about this either way. We're just trying to have a reasonable discussion, kind of covering the whole situation and kind of thinking about it and think processing our own thoughts and opinions in regards to it. So we appreciate your patience and understanding. I think if you've listened to our podcast through this episode, I think we're on episode 8 now, you kind of understand the point is to kind of talk about somewhat difficult matters. Bob and I don't necessarily agree on everything, but it's to have a discussion about what we think should happen, what makes sense, what we shouldn't or shouldn't do, and kind of go from
And
there.
this is a
So,
rare topic where I don't think we've talked a lot about it.
nope.
As long as we've known each other, I don't know if we've ever really covered Israel.
Nope. So clearly, we're talking about it because of the horrific events over the last 2 weeks, and from my opinion, what Hamas did is horrific. There's no justification for it. Um, they're a terrorist organization. Um, I just want to put that up front. Targeting civilians as they did, um, but we can get into kind of maybe what they were thinking. I don't know, or what the purpose was, or what might be some of the larger geopolitical reasons for it. But I don't know if you had any, just kind of off the top, in regards to the thing that has provoked this.
Yeah, so here's the thing, the whole war and decades of violence between these two countries, if you will, are horrifying and sad. And what happened on Saturday was horrifying and sad. But we do have decades of history here, and the same thing repeats over and over and over. And we know it's going to continue to repeat over and over and over. I absolutely support Israel's right to fight back after what happened there.
Yep.
The USA should not be funding any of it. It's funding wars, and you've heard me say this about Ukraine. We're funding death. We're funding killing.
Yep.
It's not our war. We shouldn't be funding Israel. We shouldn't be funding Ukraine. And this $100 billion to continue to fund these foreign wars is absolutely ridiculous if you just look what we've got going on over here right now.
So just to interrupt you, that argument that you're making is what Joe was talking about tonight. He's trying to defend against that argument that we need to be involved in these wars. He used the term we're essential, we're the essential country, sort of if not for us, the world would go to hell. That's the argument he's making also with
That seems like something a bad husband, abusive husband would say to his wife after she breaks up with him. Doesn't it? If it wasn't for me, you'd be miserable and dead in a ditch.
I mean, I would almost listen to it a little bit more if we had our stuff together here, right? If I looked at what you brought it up last time, what our debt to GDP is, right? It's like 120%. Then I
Yep.
look what Israel's was. It's going down. It's like at 56%. As far as economically, we're not really in a position, right?
We're not.
We just talked about our no, people dumping our debt and the cost of housing going up for us because of what's happening because
And
mortgage rates are tied to 10-year treasuries, and as that rate goes up, so does mortgage rates, right? And that affects people's ability to have housing here in this country. So, I mean, it's all tied together. It's not a oh, we need to protect the world. It's like, well, we got stuff here, and I know that's always been the America first, and that goes back to our involvement in World War II and probably even World War One. Kind of focus here, not in Europe or the Middle East or wherever. But at this particular time, I don't think we're in
We're
great
not in great
shape to be
position to
helping the
continue to
war.
fund
Right.
these wars. And yeah, and Yellen said the other day, oh yeah, the United States can handle funding 2 wars, no problem. We'll be just fine, right? And then who knows, potentially a third. And the second one could grow very fast with Iran potentially in the mix, right? And then those right north of the border or over the border there in Jordan. It could go south fast, and there's no indication that our politicians have any intent on stopping the spending, no matter what. Where's the line there? Okay, 100 billion, then a trillion, 100 trillion. I know that's not necessarily reasonable for a bunch of reasons, but the point is, where do you stop, right? When's the
I
last
mean,
time we gave Ukraine money? It couldn't have been 2 months ago.
yeah, and nobody talks about us in comparison to other European countries. I don't see any discussion on okay, here's what everyone else is funding, here's what we're funding, here's what Ukraine is doing. There's none of that. It's always here's the amount we're giving, right? It's
And
kind of in a vacuum. We're not given that information to say is everyone ponying up, um, let alone what's the end game, right? We're not even there's nobody's presenting that. It's always like we need to. I mean, he didn't present that. He's not talking about any end game. He's just saying, well, if we don't, we can't let Putin do this or we can't let Hamas do that. Um, but where's the strategy? Where's
and when
the
it
end
comes
game
to
here?
this war too,
There isn't any.
I don't know how many people are saying it, but social media is a cesspool of misinformation. You can go out there and you don't know what to believe anymore.
Yeah, that's
And
that's part of the problem. I mean, there
and
was
it's
the
bleeding over into our actual media too. I mean, they're still in mainstream media talking about, and our politicians as well, how Israel bombed a hospital in Hamas or in Gaza, and that's not even what happened. First of all, the hospital wasn't hit; it was a parking lot. Secondly,
yeah. I don't know. I haven't heard it's a parking lot, but
yeah, again, who knows at this point,
yeah, it's
right?
definitely with social media and the speed of the media to respond to things. It's very tough to get accurate and timely information. There's no doubt that in today's day and age, either and then like we talked before, you get into deep fakes and what's real and what's not. Right? Everyone's got their own interests and everyone just throws up their hands. Um, yeah, it makes it very difficult to figure out what's going on. The fog of war is tough enough to begin with, and then you throw in social media to get a really an understanding. Unless you're on the ground, it's very hard to understand what's going on, right?
And then I want to say this too: Rashida Tlaib is embarrassing. That whole thing that she led all these people into the Capitol yesterday is absolutely embarrassing, especially after she commented on Trump and blamed Trump for what happened in January 6th years back.
So I saw that you posted that, and I well, I guess they were arrested. Any breach, I mean, they have a right to free speech. They don't have a right to uh, do so without a permit in the Capitol and whatnot. That's fine. I would like to, as I think about this, and I noticed as I've been watching the coverage, Fox News calls it Israel at war, and I've noticed MSNBC and maybe CNN call it the Israeli-Hamas war. Um, I would like to point out there should be a distinction between Hamas and the Palestinian people. Do you kind of agree with that?
Oh, there's absolutely a distinction. And
Okay.
what I don't know is, did the citizens really vote Hamas in? Do they support Hamas?
Yeah,
Or
I
is it a
mean,
situation where it's corrupt? I suspect it's probably somewhere in between.
well,
But
they
I
do
think,
they do have I guess the PL it used to be the PLO. Abbas is still a leader who took over for Arafat. Um, I guess it's the Palestinian Authority now. I think is the name of it. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to distinguish as far as popular support for Hamas or Hezbollah in Lebanon. Generally, I always think, well, if they're there and they're existing, there's got to be some level of support amongst the civilian population, right? Don't you think?
absolutely.
I
I
mean,
think I think that there I think there is. There's got to be.
but I mean, if you
But and it's
but
also very
go
telling.
back to Afghanistan, right? Similar Taliban, right? Taliban is was a terrorist organization that is now ruling again in Afghanistan. I mean, they clearly used terror and tactics to scare people, and so there is an ability to rule a larger group of people through um, those type of tactics. But the question is there some level or what level of popular support is there for that? It's
It's
hard to
also
tell.
very telling that Egypt doesn't want any of these people over their borders, right? Why? Why is it that they've closed off their borders? Because they don't know who's coming in, and they can't trust anybody, and they know the issues that come with people from that area of the world.
Right.
And uh, again, you got to support Israel's right to defend itself. We just don't have to fund it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely my I guess my hope, and maybe I'm jumping the gun because there's a couple other things I want to cover before we kind of get to the hope as far as what happens. I mean, we're kind of in the period where um, something's going to occur in the next couple of weeks. It sounds like a ground offensive, um, which may lead to an expansion. But one thing I wanted to cover was Joe going over there yesterday. I think he probably went for more than ice cream. Um, I kind of thought he might go for two reasons. Clearly, there's this amongst the conservative, and I watch Fox News to kind of get how they're playing it. I mean, they're clearly focusing on the Iran portion of this, which is something clearly is a big part of this whole equation. Because I don't think either Hamas or Hezbollah have missiles to send without Iran.
No,
Um, and I agree without a doubt. I agree as far as Iran. I do think you have to talk to people and sort of bring them in. I don't believe no one is irredeemable. So I have generally supported the nuclear discussions. I support uh, having discussions with Iran, not just sanctioning them, and which ends up hurting usually the people in the country more than anyone. Um, but as far as political uh, points, clearly that Joe lost a lot of points in regards to the timing of turning over money to Iran right before Hamas bombs Israel and commits atrocities in Israel. Clearly, that looks horrible. Obama, through the nuclear negotiations, we're not giving him money. We're releasing frozen money from years ago. But again, that from the from the viewpoint of a political, that doesn't look good, and clearly the conservatives movement and the Republicans are using that against Biden. So
well, it's
possibly,
not. It's not. Yeah, and it's not just that too. I think we've loosened up some of the oil sanctions that we had on Iran, and if I'm not mistaken, they can pump about $1 billion of oil in a very short period of time and sell it. So yeah, that I mean that $6 million is a talking point coming from the right, and I think there's some validity to it, but there's a whole lot more to it. There's a lot
right,
of oil money in Iran, and they're spending that money again. I There's a fine line, right? If Iran had nuclear weapons or was close to having them, I think probably there's something that we should do about that, given their history. That said, I'm also not for just funding more death. War is death. That's a lot of money to spend on killing people.
so let's
Well,
talk about why Iran uh, might have felt threatened. Ironically, I think my thinking about it is similar to how Putin felt threatened when Ukraine started looking more when his puppet got out of power in Ukraine, and they started looking more westerly, making deals with Europe, possibly seeking NATO and the expansion of NATO that threatens Putin in his backyard.
there were also
Similar,
biological agent manufacturing labs that's pretty close to their border. I wouldn't like that either.
right. So
Yeah,
similarly, I'm saying possibly Iran now that there were the Abraham Accords with Arab nations, the UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, not cozying up to Israel, but having agreements with Israel, right? Changing the power dynamics within the region that would ultimately be seen as a threat, um, just from the standpoint of those are all Sunni within Islam, those are Sunni nations. Iran's a Shiite nation. Um,
yeah,
just changing the power dynamics where Iran's like, well, I'm going to throw a wrench in the works here, right? Um, And I think there were quotes from Blinken and some other people that, like, this is the quietest we've seen the Middle East in a long time. And then this happens, right?
Yeah.
So
This
what
it was
what
very
they're
possibly years of planning, covertly. That's what amazes me.
well, that gets into the other point, right? You have Bibi there, and I've never been a fan of Bibi. I'm not. I mean, to me, he's a hardliner. He's a warmonger. I think he came through the military. Um, he's
You
clearly
could
had
argue that he was trying to stop what happened, although it happened.
right. How do they? I mean, these are occupied zones, right? The West Bank and Gaza are occupied. There is a, a wall. There's high levels of security. I mean, just in the number of people we're talking about here, I looked it up. As far as the population of Israel and Gaza, I mean, Israel's about, I believe, 9 million. Gaza's about 2 million. Yeah, 2 million Palestinians in Gaza, 2.7 in the West Bank. So you're talking about roughly about 5 million Palestinians, roughly
A small
10,
piece of land.
about 10 million, right? And it's and land the size less than New Jersey, and that's part of my frustration here too. It's like, are we going to start World War III over? Not to diminish the importance and the ability of people to live in peace and have self determination, but in the big picture of things, this is a small region and a limited number of individuals um, that create a lot of instability. Um, I don't know any way around it. Um, I mean that's the difficulty of it, and I guess there's 700,000 settlers in the West Bank, Israeli settlers in the West Bank. Um, but in the big scheme of things, it's a small, like you said, a small piece of land, a limited number of people, and yet, and clearly there are religious implications here.
Yeah, it's the
There,
religious implications I think that really complicate it a lot because it's that type of religious fervor
right,
isn't something I think a lot of Americans really understand. And I think in some cases, because we don't understand that, we make a lot of assumptions. I do wonder how much that really does play into it. I think there's probably some cases where the religious aspect is kind of taught and religious differences, claims of difference are fanned over there for the political elite, be it Iran or other powers, to stay in power and to be able to kind of have these proxy wars and things like that. I just don't. I, you would think people would get tired of it
yeah,
and
you would
just
think. I mean,
live
it's been going
together.
on
Everybody
for.
share the land.
I mean, Israel was formed after World War II. Clearly, the Jewish people have lived there for centuries. Um, Palestinians and Arabs have lived in the region. Um, part of the issue is it's one of those things where the European powers, after World War I and World War II, started redrawing maps, right? Um, and without the involvement of the people who were there, and so there's resentment, there's religious animosity. It doesn't fit into a logical. You would always think logically, okay, can't we just have these people live here and these people live here? But then you have terrorist groups like Hamas who believe that the Jewish state should be destroyed, which is clearly an extreme view. But if they're the ones
I,
in power in the region, then you're never going to get there. And
I
and
do
and
find it to be somewhat complicated because of the fact of what happened after World War II, right? I mean, I can completely understand the upset and the anger coming from there.
right, I mean that was their homeland, and then it's not anymore. So
But
uh,
bombing, killing
no, of course,
innocent people,
that's
you
never
know, and again, the easy answer for me, that's why we don't fund any of that garbage.
right. We're sticking our head in the middle of it for you know we're helping Israel defend itself because they have no one else in the region that's going to step up. And they're a close ally of us, and we have the second largest Jewish population. I think we're by far, I think we're outside of Israel, the United States, I think has 5 million Jewish people, and I think the next level down is France with maybe 500,000. I mean, we clearly have a large population here. Um, yeah, but again, what is the end? There's no end game, right? And I think let's. I'd like to talk a little bit about Bibi and how, I guess he had issues over the last couple of years retaining power in Israel. The conspiracy theorists would say similar to the conspiracy around World War II. If you want a war, you let the other side attack you, and then you can then proceed to wipe them out. I'm not saying that happened here, but I just they're calling it their 9/11, and we had a 9/11 commission decide how we failed on our intelligence here. Knowing what I know about the Israeli intelligence and the Israeli military, which I hold up to a high standard
Yeah.
with everything I've
And by
heard,
extension, the American intelligence.
how does this happen, right? How does this happen? Um, that they were able to inflict such an attack, um, given that they're so close and they have so many ways to monitor and whatnot. I guess time will tell. I hopefully they'll form a commission. I heard somebody say the other day that based upon this, after all is said and done, Bibi might not any longer be in power, but that's a question for another day because we've got to deal with what's in front of us now. Um, but overall, I think ultimately the failure is in the lack, similar to our country, the lack of leadership, right? Leadership that could get the people together, to get the people to follow them, to see a new path, to see a new vision.
Yeah,
I do
it's
believe that. I do believe
on
that
both
that's
sides.
possible. I have
'Cause
to believe that's possible. Right, on
I
both
agree.
sides.
Yep.
Absolutely on both sides. So there was a history, if you remember, uh, they did sign accords. The PLO and Israel. Israel recognized the PLO. It was Arafat and Itzhak Rabin in the mid '90s. There was
And
two accords.
that was a fairly good period.
Right, it was a good period, and then a right wing extremist, Israeli right wing extremist, assassinated Rabin. Right. So here's a leader that kind of brought it along, and then what do they do?
Yeah, they wrecked it.
They wrecked it. Um, that's very unfortunate. But I think ultimately that's the only way you're going to see a resolution, um, is to have a transformative leaders on both sides to say, like you said, enough is enough.
Yeah.
You know.
And I think the only way America can have any positive role is to say, you're on your own, you guys figure it out. Because I also think there's probably a lot of benefit there to keep the unrest and the funding coming from America. Because we do continue to send billions of dollars over there every year. And who knows where that money's going. And we're sending money to both sides.
Yeah, it's a war machine. I mean, it's the industrial
Hmm.
military complex. People are making tons of money off this, right? And if we're going to spend $100 billion, we're not getting. I mean, I guess in theory we're getting security and stability, but I don't think war ever brings that. But maybe I'm crazy, because at the end of the day, either side is killing somebody's mother, son, daughter, and that's just going to breed resentment for the rest of those people's lives, right? How does that bring peace to the region,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And you hear these talking heads on TV sometimes, and you get these extremists that are like, yeah, it's time. They're just gonna have to get rid of them. That's it. They've seen enough. And it's people who talk like that. I don't think have any critical thinking skills because, as you said, all that's gonna happen is there's gonna be a power gap. There's gonna be a vacuum. More bad stuff is gonna come in because you still need that leader to come in and fix it.
yeah, it's the easiest thing to say or do, right?
Yep.
Get them
So
back, whatever. I mean, I do. I mean, getting to how I would like, given how horrible it is right now, the best case scenario would be Israel doing a surgically wiping out Hamas and none of this expanding to a larger regional conflict, and we're U.S. having limited involvement. We've got aircraft carriers. I heard we've got troops on the ready to deploy. It could get
Yeah, I was reading
Unfortunately, it could
earlier.
get
We
ugly very
actually
fast.
one of our aircraft carriers shot down 3 missiles
Yeah, I heard that too.
and some drones or something.
So we're kind of getting more actively involved. That would be the best case scenario, and I think that's part of what hopefully Joe was talking to Bibi about. Kind of like tamping it down a little bit. We understand your right to defend yourself. Let's try to be as surgical as possible here. Um, if they wipe out Hamas capabilities, unfortunately, I don't think Iran and Hezbollah is going to let that happen without expanding it. Uh, so I don't see a great scenario rolling out here. And like you said, if we continue to support it, and I don't think we have even the coalition that we have around Ukraine with European partners and whatever
No,
in regards to Israel. We are kind of a little bit hanging on our own there, I believe.
we need to
I've
stop all of it.
It's scary. I mean, this is to me scarier than Ukraine,
No, I
um,
agree. No,
as far as what can happen in that region and getting us pulled in further. So, and it's a horrible, obviously horrible time for it, right? Uh, Considering everything that else is happening in the world and in this country, to have to deal with that. But um, that's the way
so
things go.
we agree then. We should be funding it. Probably
Yeah, I mean,
back off. Both wars though. Both wars.
yeah, I mean, I don't know the mechanics of military support like that. Um, Clearly, we can. I don't have a problem necessarily with putting our boats in the region to kind of tap down
Hmm.
other, kind of a show of force, right? We've got the boats there for that purpose, I believe. Kind of like, hey,
Yeah. Don't do
don't do
anything.
anything
Don't
stupid,
do it.
right? Right.
Yeah,
Don't do
and
it.
Russia's doing
That's different than
stuff about that way
providing
too. No.
that's to me that's different than providing missiles and military aid so somebody else can invade somebody else's territory, right?
Yeah.
For whatever purpose, hopefully for surgical, but then our bombs are falling on other people, and
And,
and there
and the
we go.
cynic in me, I still wonder why hasn't somebody gone to the table with Putin? You never hear news stories about that. Nobody's going to the table with Putin and trying to talk. What does he want? There's got to be some sort of agreement out there. Stop the war, give the land back.
That's what I'm
We'll
saying.
agree to this.
There's
There's
no discussion in regards to
no. It
any
just appears that
diplomatic solutions to this. It's always like,
politicians
well,
are
we gotta
buying up defense
fight until
stocks,
they
and that's
get
what this is
right.
about.
It's all about fighting till I don't know what the end game is. I mean, nobody explains that to me. Do you think Putin's just going to give up?
No.
No, he's going to. He's got, gas prices go up. That works in his favor. He it's his political survival, right? I mean, he's going to continue until he can get what he at least appears to be a face-saving solution. So can't we get to that? So, I'm a peace lover to begin with, so I'm pretty easy to. I'm not necessarily an isolationist necessarily. I think we should have diplomatic influence around the world, uh, but funding wars I always have a problem with, because I don't. It never seems to end well, and the argument would be, well, they gave in to Hitler, and look what happened in Europe. But my argument is, you can't you can't fight yesterday's war today. You know, you have to look at the situation that you're in now, um, and go from there. Um, so I don't know how this will play out. I mean, I pray for both sides, for the Palestinian people. May they have
That's
peace.
how I look at it.
May the
You don't.
Israeli may they live
The
in peace.
images are awful.
Right. That's
Just
all we
awful.
could do. But I do have a problem with us giving money for war. That's not necessarily Biden's
It,
making the case that it's our war. I don't know.
it's not, and that's the problem. It's not, and I don't think the majority of Americans agree with that either. And Biden's going to have a hard time arguing that in an election year. next year that we should continue to fund these wars.
Yeah, and then
And
let's see what let's see what time, and then just so I think that kind of caps it up. We'll probably talk more as this progresses, but clearly we're praying for everyone there. Hope they hope there's a solution in the offing without too much more loss of life. Um, Interestingly enough, there's also the student protests here in the United States that I wanted to kind of briefly touch on because it seems to be more and more in the news. The pro-Palestinian demonstrations, these law students writing pro-Palestinian and then getting their offer letters rescinded. Um,
Dennis
Interesting.
lost his job the other day for taking down images of the kidnapped children. Yeah,
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, they were pulling down pictures of the hostages, the Israeli hostages. Um, yeah, I mean that's a dynamic. I, I I don't know what their purpose is. I do believe Palestine deserves to be free. Also, would never support Hamas or in any way say that their actions are justified here. Um,
no. And that's what's embarrassing is when you get these rallies where people are saying the actions are justified, the actions are deserved. Not only that, I celebrate the actions, I celebrate these deaths because you're seeing that stuff out there. It's just absolutely disgusting.
I mean, I do understand they're under occupation, and there are settlements and there's territorial issues. I understand all that, but to justify horrific actions, terrorist actions against civilians, you just can't. You just
You
can't.
can't do it.
Um,
And it's really it's eye-opening to me to see how large these protests are and how passionate these people are
mhm.
and how a lot of it really does appear to be anti-Semitism, not just because they're protesting, but because of what they're saying and chanting and what these signs are. I had no idea how much anti-Semitism and how deep and strong that anti-Semitism is, not just in our country, but around the world. But to me, most importantly, in our country, because I mean, it's our country. I didn't think it was here, but it's here. It's
Yeah, I mean,
crazy.
it definitely exists. I mean, you don't like to think about it because you probably don't encounter it yourself that much, but
No,
it's
I've never
there,
seen
right?
it. Never. I mean,
Right.
I've never seen somebody refer to a Jewish person in a derogatory manner. You hear jokes. Jokes are whatever, light-hearted, generally speaking. I've never met somebody that I right away knew this person has a hatred for Jewish people. I've never seen it.
Yep.
It exists. It's obvious that it exists, and I don't know. When I see a Jewish person, I see them as just another white person, right? Or just another person. I don't get the difference, generally speaking. And the same goes for any other race of people, for that matter. I've seen limited other racism out there. I don't see a lot of it. Once in a while, you see it. You know who these people are, but the anti-Semitism here really took me by surprise.
Yep. I mean, that's definitely part of the overall equation here. Just to kind of conclude on that piece, I did think it was kind of interesting that because I do watch the conservative media, I flip between all the stations just to see what everyone's saying and their take on things. But Fox has clearly been focused in on the Palestinian protests because there's the whole college campus issue and the liberal the crazy liberals in college and how it's been out of control, which you know could be part of this here. But in regards to then they were fine uh, with companies rescinding the job offers. They said that wasn't cancellation, even though people were expressing their right to free speech, right?
Yeah, and I
That
haven't
it was
watched
sort
the
of hypocritical to me that we're okay with this cancellation because they're saying that something that we don't like them to be saying. I
I
always
haven't
just thought
watched a
it,
minute of it. I don't have a TV until I
yeah,
moved here.
but
But
that's kind of what I've been hearing on that end, and I've always
I
thought it
think
interesting that the
am
conservative
I correct in
side.
my assumption that none of the news stations like MSNBC, Fox, CNN, CBS, ABC, none of them are making the argument that we shouldn't be funding this? right? They're
No,
putting the point
Jenny.
on yeah, look at what the college kids are doing, or look what's happening over here. Look at all this death over here and over here, but nobody's saying we shouldn't fund it.
No,
Everybody's got an
not too
angle
much.
that provokes funding for war, right?
Yeah, from either end, right? Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's why it's all garbage in my
As
opinion.
long as we can
No,
continue to fund the war machine.
yeah,
Yep. Unfortunately, that's where we're at. So, uh, good discussion, Bob. I like that one. I think
yeah, me too.
I think we covered many different angles. Unfortunately, there's no easy solution. Like I said, it's got to be leadership. It's got to be the people, and unfortunately, that time has not come and does not look in the immediate offing. But you never know. You never know. All you can do is hope. All right, I think that's all we got for tonight. I'll let you go to bed, get some rest.
Great chatting.
Great chatting with you, and we'll talk to everyone soon. Take it easy.
Bye.